Hello and welcome to the Discovery Roundtable, the episode-by-episode discussion show for Star Trek Discovery from the perspective of Star Trek Online players and Foundry authors. I'm your host, Drogyn1701, and with me, as always, is my co-host and technical guru, Greendragoon.
As always, sciencing the science.
Well, I say technical guru, but actually I do most of the work for this show. You do most of the stuff for our other show, the Foundry Roundtable. So, but he does do the audio recording.
I push the button.
Show. Yes. And you do it well.
Except for that one time.
Best. Except for that one time. We don't discuss that one time. We hit the reset button afterwards and it never happened. So joining us this week, making a return to the Discovery Roundtable is CaptPFDennis.
Good evening. I don't do anything.
You just sit there and talk. That's
right.
That's what
I
we
press no buttons whatsoever.
You used to though. Did the Primetime UGC and Authors Outpost and several other things.
Yes, it seems so long ago now.
Back in the classic days of the early Foundry community.
Yes, the golden age.
The golden age. Well, we're still going strong, and obviously we still want to keep up with current Star Trek, because we actually have current Star Trek for like the first time
Thank God.
In the history of STO. We have a concurrent TV show, which we mentioned way back when we started this thing. So we are here, of course, to discuss episode 11 of Star Trek Discovery, The Wolf Inside, which a lot of people have been identifying as The Wolf Within. I think it's the alliteration is easy. People want the alliteration. But it's actually The Wolf Inside, quite clearly referencing a certain Klingon disguised as a human. I think.
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit about this on the last show, but I think I've seen some people online who are disappointed that essentially everybody figured out that Tyler and Voq were the same person before the big reveal.
Yes.
I'm not disappointed by that we were able to figure out. It's like, okay, yeah, we picked up what the writers and directors and everything, we picked up what they were laying down.
Right, they gave us the clues. I mean, I don't think it was supposed to be that big of a secret. And I don't think the disappointing thing is that people figured it out as much as it is that the character is now compromised. Yes. I think Tyler became, a favorite.
He did. I really liked him, and I'm almost a little disappointed that he is Voq, because I kind of wanted to keep him around.
Well, he's not dead, so I'm wondering now yet. If they find some way to save him.
I wonder. Keep him locked in the brig and just go to him for advice like Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. And I wonder why, it was important to save him when they could have just beamed out the data that they needed. But
I think Burnham just didn't want to summarily execute him, because I think, as we talked about in our previous episode, he has been a big part of her emotional growth.
Sure.
And I think she obviously still has some feelings for him and is very conflicted about those feelings.
But that first officer is going to figure this out. I mean, they had to know that he didn't stay out there in space. You would think they would know.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one. I saw somebody online complaining that, wouldn't they know that Discovery was there to receive this transport? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, maybe they're hidden or something, and maybe this will come up in the next episode, that, Detmer, the first officer, is going to figure it out. She's going to go back through the sensor logs and, hang on a second.
I mean, skipping ahead slightly, because we haven't even recapped anything yet.
This is true.
I will say, I think she is the one that ratted out Burnham to the Emperor, and that's why the Emperor showed up.
Right.
That's an idea.
When she delayed the order.
No, I mean, I think that using Voke as the carrier for the data was actually very clever because it looks like normal operations to anyone on the ship. If she
Sure.
had tried to go and like walked over to the transmitter and just beamed the disk out, that would have been suspicious because that's not normal operations. But sticking on someone you're supposedly executing in the manner which they established is normal method of execution, it doesn't raise as much suspicion.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying, my point was they could have just beamed it off his body.
True, if they wanted to kill him, but they are
right.
They are still Starfleet.
They are
I
still
get it.
Starfleet.
But they're putting her at risk now, is all I'm saying. She's going to answer for that eventually.
Well, there's definitely a lot to answer for on many fronts here. but like you said, we haven't really recapped the episode. So obviously, we pick up, I should say, where we left off from last time. Burnham and Tyler had infiltrated the ISS Senjo using Lorca as a prisoner, and they have to play along basically till they can get the data from the USS Defiant and how it crossed over back to Discovery somehow. And in the course of playing along with this, they have to resolve a situation where the rebels have been located and the rebel leader has been located. And basically, Burnham is ordered to destroy them from orbit. And, being the, Starfleet goody officer instead of the Terran evil officer, she didn't want to do that. So she concocts this excuse to go down to the planet, saying we're going to infiltrate and get intel on all the rebel bases.
Although, I wonder why. 'Cause that really wasn't her mission.
No, it wasn't.
They were told they would have to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do to survive. You have to wonder why she did that. Her main goal was to get that info back to Discovery.
I think she wants to save lives, and I think she realizes that the Terran Empire is bad, and the rebels are worth supporting and worth making sure that they can survive this, especially their leadership.
And she did want to know how the Klingons and Tellarites and Andorians could live together in harmony.
Yeah.
I always kind of saw some similarities to Mirror Mirror in this, because in the TOS episode you have a similar situation where you've got Kirk posing as his mirror version, and he's ordered to fire on the planet, right. And he keeps delaying until like Spock and everyone else is getting very suspicious of him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Sarek even had that goatee.
Exactly. Yeah. There was that, and then I was struck by the similarities to In a Mirror Darkly from Enterprise, of course. This feels like very much a direct sequel to that two-parter, because it involves the rebels, or basically every non-human race right. is joining in this rebellion, even the Klingons now, which is a new thing from the Enterprise era.
Yep,
so the Klingons weren't quite involved then.
Talking with someone who isn't as big of a Trekkie who has been watching Discovery, and he'd kind of pointed out that the whole plot with the Mirror Universe seemed very convoluted, and I kind of realized that if you aren't familiar with what happened at Enterprise and whatnot, it does come off as a little weird and convoluted because you've got all these story elements borrowed from Enterprise, and for someone watching new, it's like, well, where did all this come from? What the heck is going on?
Right. Yep.
Which is why the previous episode had to be so talky. Had those long exposition scenes, which I complained about, but they really are, I suppose, necessary, particularly for people like that who are maybe not as familiar with, two very specific episodes of Enterprise and one very specific episode of TOS, and 4 or 5 very specific episodes of DS9.
That's why, I wonder why they were in kind of a hurry to do that in first season. I mean, they're hitting us with a lot of stuff right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, they got Harry Mudd. They've got the Mirror Universe. They're putting a lot of classic Trek stuff right in there.
And now 3 full episodes in the Mirror Universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least 3. Because it's quite clear that, obviously this situation is not resolved at the end of this episode. The question is, will they resolve it at the end of the next one, or will this continue on for more episodes?
I've heard people say that they're going to keep the show there, which I disagree with. But
I seriously doubt that.
it would be like Voyager in the Mirror Universe.
We're going to have some fan theories here that are not proven true.
Yeah, that one's the show wouldn't survive that way.
I don't think they're going to turn it into the Star Trek version of Sliders.
No, I agree.
My gut feeling is that this next episode will probably be the last one, and it'll wrap up the.
Yeah, wrap it up.
It feels like we're building to a climax.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Discovery has been doing these kind of mini arcs throughout the season, where there's one episode of setup and another of payoff, and then we're on to kind of the next thing within a little bit of an overarching framework. More of an overarching framework than most of the other series, but
which is fine.
Yeah,
I'm very pleased with it so far.
But I don't think they're going to drag it out over more than one more episode. I think.
I was glad that they had Voke as the leader of the resistance. I like the character.
That's kind of an interesting touch.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was nice to see him back in his full Klingon glory. The albino Klingon.
He is the Wolf, though, is a curious name, for a Klingon. I mean, there were no humans there. A wolf is a human animal. You would think they would have called him something else.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a rebellion against the Terran Empire, so.
Yeah, these rebels are obviously very familiar with the Terran Empire. Probably a lot of them are former slaves, I would say. So they probably picked up a few humanisms.
Yeah. Speaking of slaves, you had Saru there.
Yeah.
Which is definitely interesting.
I'm getting the feeling, and like everybody's guess as to who the Emperor was going to be, you kind of knew, because I think they have this need to make sure the cast members play their part.
Yeah.
And that's good in ways and bad in ways.
The people that they killed off early, especially a big name actor like Michelle Yeoh, I think it is kind of a clever way to bring her back, and have that not be, her only contribution.
Right.
That's an interesting point. Do you think we could see Landry come back?
I would have figured we'd already would have.
You never know. It's not over yet.
Yeah. I mean, in Star Trek, nobody's ever dead until
So I thought
their particular show goes off the air.
It would have been cool to see a different character as the Emperor. And at first I said Pike, but somebody reminded me, no, Kirk killed Pike to get control of the Enterprise in the Mirror Universe.
This is
and
true.
I said, I haven't seen Mirror in ages. But anyway, it could, like somebody like Robert April, somebody we've never seen except maybe the animated series. But, just to have the name. There's been no real live-action character representation. That would have been something.
Well, I mean, the door's still open on him, because I think wasn't he referenced when Saru was very briefly in command, and
he was
decided to check on who were the most decorated Starfleet captains.
All right,
I think he was in that list.
Yeah.
So I mean, the door's still open on a lot of these minor TOS characters.
Yeah, and these are the things I've been waiting for. Little possible guest appearances of Unreal.
Which ironically was exactly what people were waiting for with Enterprise, and then they finally started doing more stuff, more connections to TOS in the 4th season.
Right. That show ended way too soon.
We missed out on the whole Romulan War.
Yeah, that would have been something.
That would have been cool. I do love me some space battles.
Yeah. Well, we're getting those.
We are getting those with Discovery. This is true. We had a pretty cool shot this week with the Emperor showing up and bombarding the planet with photon torpedoes. That was very cool looking.
Yeah, that's one thing they're not skimping on. Their movie quality effects.
They are showing us where that budget went.
Yeah, and they guarantee 3 seasons minimum from what I read.
Well, I know they've renewed for a 2nd season. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Did they put in a 3rd?
That was their plan right off the bat. They're going to give it because they said all the previous series took 3 years to get off the ground. So they're going, instead of cutting it early, they're going to give it to 3.
I would usually forward thinking for a television studio.
I don't think they wanted to screw it up. I think that this is such a valuable franchise that they didn't want to be the people to kill it. So they'll give it whatever it needs, I think.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if
Nemesis.
they come back in the second season is much stronger.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's
been an
rare to
impressive
find a show
first season.
that doesn't.
I mean, if you think about it, think of all the original Trek shows throughout the years, and when has a season 1 been this good?
TOS, that was the only one.
Yes.
But I will point out that TOS season 1 did lack Chekhov, and Chekhov is awesome.
This is true. So, obviously, we had really a lot going on in this episode. It's the cold open. It starts off with a really neat shot coming from the outside of the ship into an inside, a damaged area with flickering lights, and it's very, horror movie-esque, and you see some poor ensign in there doing repairs, and I don't know about you guys, but I thought something's going to jump out and attack her. But really, they didn't go for a scare. They went for, creep factor, because they look over and there is tragically Stamets cradling Culber's body.
Mm-hmm. And he's saying, we're in the forest. We're in the forest.
So all along he was talking stuff about the mirror universe. I think he was seeing into it.
Well, he's got that sight, that interdimensional, intertimeline.
He is the Kwisatz Haderach.
Well, I mean, if we're really going to go into theorizing about this, we kind of got to talk about that last scene where we see Stamets meet Mirror Stamets.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of that yet.
Do we know that that's Mirror Stamets, or is he just
he's wearing a mirror uniform?
He was wearing the mirror uniform, yeah.
Oh, was he? I didn't notice that. Did not notice that.
Yeah.
And I will say that his mannerisms reminded me a lot of the way Stamets was acting when he was high on spores. So I think Stamets and Mirror Stamets have been trading minds.
That's an idea. So we don't yet know if the Mirror Universe Discovery was playing around with Spore Drive.
It seems
but
that they were.
This may be evidence that they were, like you said. Yeah.
I don't think there was any information to the, there was no information to the contrary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just didn't see anything of Mirror Discovery because they were just gone. And I suppose in theory that means they're back in the Prime Universe doing what.
They might be, causing mischief.
If they're in the Prime Universe, you'd think that their main objective would be to kill Klingons anyway, right? So, they might be on board with
helping.
the war.
Assuming they're not as terrible at infiltration as Mirror Kirk was, I'd assume that they're trying to get back.
Yeah, I always like that Spock, must have immediately picked up on, this is not my crew. These are not my officers. There's something more going on here, and he immediately confines them to the brig. That was a fun part.
Yeah.
So I tell you guys something that took me out of the episode. I mentioned they did the shot in the cold open where they start from outer space and move through the window inside the ship. They did that shot 3 times. They did it again two more times after that in the meat of the episode. And I noticed that, and I'm thinking to myself, yes, they did it again. Why are they? Don't waste minutes on that. Do it once and it was cool. Twice maybe I can go for that, but 3 times was a bit much of showing off their special effects there.
I think they were reusing shots or reusing their effects shots to save money. Which
I think it was a different shot each time, but it was the same sort of thing where you start on a wide shot of the ship and you zoom in and go through a window into a scene with actors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you're going to do that multiple times, you got to space it out a little.
I think that's probably unique to the director at that point,
It certainly could be.
I don't think I've noticed that in any of the others so far. Just maybe a transition he or she likes.
It could be. But anyway, that's really one of the very few things I found about this episode that I didn't like. Or at least, obviously they were cool looking shots, but it took me out of the suspension of disbelief.
There's one thing I was wondering, though. Do they have no cameras in sickbay?
There are no security footage because we haven't talked about this yet, but there's a scene with Tilly and Saru where they quite clearly believe that Stamets killed Culber in a fit of spore-induced something.
Psychosis.
Which, I mean, I can understand them believing initially until they review the records to find out when and how he was killed, in which case it would clearly show Tyler.
Right. Well, he knows now.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously they didn't. They didn't reveal it right away.
Yeah, I mean,
so they could do the big
clearly,
reveal.
Yeah, they clearly had no security footage because they jumped to immediately the wrong conclusion. So I think to give it a little bit of misdirection.
Not for very long, though.
No.
And her reaction was interesting when she found out.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, where's this coming from?
I like that they didn't like play it with sort of like immediate violence or something like that. Where it's a very sort of intimate dialogue scene between the two of them.
Yeah, I liked it.
I think it's probably one of my favorite scenes so far.
And Saru saves the day.
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
because he feels a little close to her now. She gave him a name. Whether it's I guess it is his name.
His name in our universe.
And how would she know that? Well, all the characters have the same name, as far as we know.
Well, he said at the beginning, slaves don't get names.
Yeah, but he must have been born with them.
Who knows? I mean, if he was born into slavery.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
They're establishing some things about the Terran Empire that we haven't seen so far, like that kind of slavery. Because I mean, I never got quite that vibe out of In a Mirror Darkly when they showed, like a Vulcan, a couple of Vulcan officers on board the Mirror Enterprise.
Yep.
They didn't seem like they were slaves. They were more like, really have no choice but to be here and be doing this job.
Yeah, I mean,
otherwise.
I think T'Pol kind of makes it clear that they are not there of their own volition. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, especially the way
conscription rather
Archer
than slavery is
treated T'Pol. She was definitely way, way, way lower than him as far as he was concerned.
Yeah, they're a subclass.
Maybe this is just
being used for their intelligence and their skill.
Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if put it past the Terrans to kind of take the Kelpians' more timid nature and exploit it.
Just completely step on them.
They're food.
They're a prey species, and the Terrans are predators.
So, I mean,
so what do you guys think of the not slight but not overbearing redesign of the Tellarites and the Andorians?
I liked it.
I did too. I liked them both.
I did as well.
Honestly, this was far easier to swallow than the Klingon redesign.
The Andorians didn't change very much.
They have kind of a different sort of facial structure. There's some bone structure to their
features on their face,
which I kind of liked. It made them look a little more alien. It's less of the guy with blue face paint.
Right. The Tellarites, in TOS, they were basically pig humans. Basically, probably the first vision of them. And then they, when Enterprise came along, they did a really intricate redesign.
Yeah.
And now they're more boarish with tusks, like a wild boar.
Well, I tell you, I am hoping that some of these options will make it into Star Trek Online for character customization.
Yes.
Well, I want to have some tusks on my Tellarite.
I'm also hoping that, the show goes over well enough where they'll try another. I'd like this universe to expand, like the TNG era universe did.
Well, I have that hope myself.
It's difficult because there are so many fewer shows. The others, every season we had 26, something like that.
I think the lower episode count is a little bit of a choice rather than, it's not being forced by anyone. I think they picked a style that they wanted to go with, and that style is better served by a lower episode count. I've actually said the same about the later seasons of Deep Space Nine. I think may have been better served by a lower episode count, so you'd have less deviations from the war plot.
Although it's also a popular television norm now with Netflix and other streaming services where this is how series are being released.
Yeah, and it's something that was much more common over in Europe previously, but is kind of gotten more popular here, just so they can tell those more tightened stories.
Sure. Look at Sherlock. Would you get 3 episodes? Season?
At least they're 2 hours.
Series?
Yeah, and British shows are very much like that. You get a number of shows that I've watched where, you might have 2 episodes in the first season, and if people liked it, maybe you'll get 4 in the second season.
Well, in America, that's a mini-series.
Yes. Or what do they call it now? An event series. So let's see here. Okay, let me run this past you. We sort of alluded to it earlier in the episode, but I'm not sure I would have gone to the mirror universe quite this quickly in the history of this particular show. I think I would have stuck with a little bit more of a down to earth plot beforehand. Before get everything established, get a story told, and then when you get to like season 2, then open it up and try some new things and try some things that are maybe a little bit more out there.
I'm in 100% agreement with that.
Yeah, I am too.
Said I think they're cramming a little too much in. Plus, the focus on the Klingon War. I mean, this is one episode we had an emergency where we had to get there in time to save the dilithium mine. Hasn't anything else gone on like that? Where are these Klingons and what are they doing? And if this Discovery is so important, shouldn't she be involved in many more incidents?
Yeah. We've been told that they are, but we haven't been shown that a lot. And now we have at least 3 episodes where we're far away from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually going to take it a step further and say that I don't think it was the best choice to tackle the Klingon War in the first season, because it is something that demands like greater amounts of effects, and versus had they started pre-Klingon War, they could have built up to it and developed it more. Yeah,
I mean, more like Cold War type of situation.
Discovery is in this weird predicament that they kind of built for themselves, of trying to both be something brand new and something heavily tied back to classic Trek. And I don't know that it's serving both masters well.
So I was thinking about this the other day, and a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was the old expanded universe of Star Wars stories in book form, which obviously they're still making books, but they have thrown out the old extended universe. But one of the things they used to do is they had them, I think there were 2 or 3 books that were all like short stories, set within the Star Wars universe and all having, something in common, like, it was Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina or something like that. Mm-hmm. They all revolved around characters that were found in the Mos Eisley Cantina. And so far, Discovery feels like one of those short stories set in the Star Wars or in the Star Trek universe. It doesn't necessarily feel like a complete show like the other ones do. Now, it might grow out of this, and I hope it does, because obviously we're going to have more seasons of this, and it's not going to. I think it's not going to exactly stay like it is now, but I think at the moment it's like telling a short story set in the Star Trek universe.
Well, you think most of the shows had a core cast, especially TOS, which had basic 3, and then the peripheral characters. This show has more characters, and they've spent less time on them because there's always so much going on. One episode you might get to know Stamets a little bit. Then the next episode you might see Culber, who you hardly know at all. By now, more than half the season is gone, and how many characters do you really know well? Maybe a little less. Maybe a little less
say maybe
going 3. On. With a little less going on, there might have been a little bit more character exploration.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's something they have said that they want to do in season 2 is explore the characters a bit more, learn a bit more about the characters, and develop some of the side characters as well, like the bridge crew.
Mm-hmm. And I guess you need the first season to, it's a shakedown season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They'll go back, look at it, and say, okay, what did we do, and what can be improved? What did we cut?
And that's why I think that Discovery will come back much better in its second season than it was in its first, because they will be able to take that step back and really kind of zero in. There was a number of, shall we say, growing pains in the development of this first season. I mean, with the showrunner leaving and various changes to direction. And I think what we see in season 1 is partially due to that. Because, I mean, you still get Brian Fuller credited for story, which means that it was his idea, but then it had to be taken and re-executed by others, and so yeah, you can kind of see some of those growing pains in season 1.
And it's certainly not the first show to have that issue. Obviously, the other Star Trek shows.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you're one of those people who liked the first seasons of Enterprise. There seems to be a division among the fandoms. Like, there's people who like seasons 3 and 4, and there's people who like seasons 1 and 2, and only very rarely do you find people who liked all 4.
Well, see, I was going to say I liked them all to varying degrees. I mean, like I always say, there's no bad Trek, just bad episodes.
This is true. Speaking of which, it's actually the earlier this week was the 23rd anniversary of Voyager.
Yeah. Wow.
And earlier this month was the 25th anniversary of the first episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Both of which shows had their share of bad episodes.
Sure. The first couple of seasons and most of them were tough. That's why I said Discovery's a hell of a first season.
It is.
Even though it's got its kinks.
I think there really is a lot of solid drama here, a lot of good story, a lot of good characters. I mean, how much are people discussing the characters in this show? Discussing Lorca's actions. We haven't talked much about Lorca this episode, but he's a little bit interesting in this episode because, he's obviously clearly being essentially tortured 24/7.
He's taking it for the team.
Taking one for the team. Okay, so when the Emperor shows up, and it's revealed to be Giorgio, people are saying that Lorca's smiling a little bit, like he already knew, and they're taking this as evidence that he's from the Mirror Universe.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I 100% buy into that, but I am starting to think that maybe there's something to that theory.
Yeah, and I think this next episode will probably reveal that.
And we don't know where he is. We don't know if he shows up. We don't know that he's dead.
Talking about Mirror Lorca?
Yeah.
Mirror Lorca. Well, the question is, is the Lorca that we know, has he always been Mirror Lorca?
Oh, I don't know.
Escaped to our universe and took the place.
No, I know that's what people are alluding to, but I don't know.
There is insufficient evidence to disprove or prove it.
There you go. As much as people complain that they saw the Tyler is Vogue thing coming, the show is able to surprise us on things.
Mm-hmm.
And
it has
this one, I don't know.
consistently.
It could go either way.
But I think because they've been able to surprise us, people are more easily led to think these things. There's going to be another twist. That's going to be a twist. There's going to be another, because you never know what's coming.
But I will say we are still in the dark about Lorca's motivations, and there are some oddities to his behavior. So clearly something is coming up with him.
So he's either from the Mirror Universe originally, or he's just damaged.
Yeah,
a very damaged human being. Either way, you got some good drama going on there.
Sure. I mean, he's a guy who lost his entire crew, or it's not him.
He's a changeling.
Yeah.
Free Species 8472. No, I doubt they're going to go with that.
No.
I doubt we're going to see a whole
different universe.
I doubt we're going to see a whole ton of callbacks to like Deep Space Nine or Voyager.
Yeah, different quadrants. They're too far away. No deltas or gammas yet. Please. I don't want to see that all of a sudden. Or Borg. Oh, please, no Borg. Please. Enterprise, even though it was a decent episode, their appearance in Enterprise was odd.
Well, not if you think about Enterprise as a sequel to First Contact.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Story, but anyway, that's another.
I haven't talked about it on the air here, but I have. If you follow me on Twitter, I've talked about it there. I have this theory that First Contact, because of the time travel there, it essentially created a new timeline, one where the Borg interfered in those events and left lasting changes in the timeline, and everything that aired after First Contact. So half of DS, the later third of DS9, about half of Voyager and Enterprise, were all in this new timeline that was altered. And so that's why, maybe Enterprise looks more advanced than TOS, because it's in a new timeline where things are different. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why Discovery looks more advanced. because it's actually a sequel to Enterprise.
It's a possibility. They did get a message out, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Partially.
But
they set up their interplexing beacon.
And that's not the only effect, because you had basically the crew of the Enterprise telling everything and revealing everything to Zefram Cochrane and Lily. So, what did they do with that information? Maybe Zefram Cochrane, he knew that, there was going to be a famous USS Enterprise so far in the future. So he insisted that the first Warp 5 ship be named Enterprise. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be.
Right.
In the original timeline.
I think what they implied in the episode of Enterprise was that by the time it reached Borg space, it would have been just about the time that the Borg suddenly started making forays into the Federation. Because even by the time
it would have been TNG.
The D shows up or gets kicked over to the Delta Quadrant. They'd already could see, this is similar to colonies we've lost along the border. And that's to kind of explain why the Borg were already encroaching on Federation space even before the Enterprise D met the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to say that Star Trek is the original cinematic universe. All of this stuff exists in the same sort of, package. So, Discovery doesn't exist in a vacuum. Even if it doesn't always choose to go 100% with what we've seen before, we've never seen that sort of facial structure on an Andorian before, but, so what? It's still an Andorian.
My feeling about the whole thing is it was 2017. Why are you going to make a television show look like one that was made in 1966? Update it. How is an audience going to believe that in the future, they're getting readouts on paper like a fax machine? They had to update it. They had to in order for it to make any sense whatsoever. And once you do that, you're saying, okay, well, we're going to take Star Trek and we're going to update it for a new generation. And we're going to make a few little changes. They just didn't anticipate that people would lose their minds.
Oh, I think they must have known.
Yeah, but
Star Trek seems all too predictable
to be accepting. Supposed to be,
and I
minded.
I think the majority actually are. All three of us here, we've been to Star Trek conventions. Some of us many, many times.
Yeah.
Like you. And the people you meet there and the people you talk to in person are all fantastic people, and they're all excited about like every part of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be standing in line with somebody and talking to them in the line to get an autograph with somebody from Deep Space Nine, and then you'll see that same person in line to get Carl Urban's autograph.
Sure. I've seen them multiple years, bumped into the same people year after year.
Mm-hmm. So I think the actual majority of stars, beyond just who posts on the internet, are actually accepting of change and accepting of whatever's on screen because it's Star Trek and because we love this stuff.
People have their go ahead.
I was gonna say someone a while back posted an editorial on that was posted just after Star Trek the Next Generation aired, and it absolutely reamed Next Generation for being different than TOS. They were like near vitriolic about how much they hated
bald captain. How can you have a bald captain?
But it's just kind of a reminder that TNG was.
Oh yeah,
there were haters.
Stuff. Having haters is not exactly an invention of the internet.
No, or of Star Trek. You got them in every fandom. But here's a question though. If they did do everything that people have suggested. Say Discovery came out and they were all wearing the cage type outfits with the thick like fisherman's net sweaters, and that would be kind of like a novelty, and you could watch that for a couple of episodes and say, oh wow, it's cool, it looks just like that. How fast do you think you'd get sick of it? How fast do you think you'd be like, there's no digital readouts, this is ridiculous?
I was actually gonna make just about that same point, because I have been watching for the first time episodes of Star Trek Continues, and it is very fun to see how well they've matched TOS.
The lighting is
perfect.
perfect.
And the feel, the lighting is perfect. Down to what seems like the quality of the video itself. The picture quality. And and that is fun. It's fun as a novelty, like you said. I don't think as a professional show that a show should do that as anything, more than a one-off episode like Trials and Tribulations.
No, it continues to exist as an homage, and that's fine for a fan series.
Mm-hmm.
Great, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But for,
I'm really enjoying it.
A professional show, I don't see it. I think they would,
yeah.
Especially, if you're a professional, you don't want to retread what somebody else has done. You have your own career, you're your own person. You want to put your own touches on. And I completely understand that.
Do that.
To a point. And the few changes that they did make really don't bother me.
I wasn't. Some of it is, down to if I was in charge, I would not necessarily make the same choice. I don't think I personally would have redesigned the Klingons, but it has grown on me, and I've started to like the design, especially when we started to see some of them with different uniforms. I didn't care for Takuvma and Vok's uniforms, but I like Cole's uniform. Mm-hmm. I think it's maybe a little bit more traditional Klingon, more.
Well, I like where they're going with it because I think that's the ultimate aim. I think once they unite the houses, you're going to see something we're more familiar with.
Yeah, I saw a good suggestion though. For a character to bring in who's a definite callback to something in previous Trek, which is Curzon Dax. Mm. We're going to need. Maybe some peace treaties or something, or at least something to declare a ceasefire because, there's not exactly open hostilities by the time we get to TOS. So, maybe bring in someone like Curzon Dax as a peacemaker, and have that process in there as part of the show.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think they should do a little more of that, which is why I said it would have been nice to have Robert April as the Emperor. That would have been kind of cool.
And Curzon would be hilarious because, he'd be drinking and womanizing all over the place. So let's see. Anything else from this particular episode? I don't know. There was a lot of plot progression. The characters finally find out that Tyler is Vok. Mm-hmm. But obviously he is not going away. He's going to be imprisoned on the Discovery. But we obviously leave off with a big cliffhanger, which is, Burnham, the Emperor's here, and Burnham is obviously in trouble.
Yeah, she didn't hide her to surprise very well.
Sorry. And obviously, she has essentially disobeyed orders, or at least delayed her orders. And there's going to be consequences. So, when does the worm turn, I guess, is the question. When or if they find out that Burnham is not from their universe.
Well, my guess is they're going to begin in a very tight spot in the beginning of the next episode. And I think it's going to move rather quickly. I think by the time half the episode is over, they're going to have, figured something out, figured a way out. Well, because now that Saru's got the information, they're going to be working on Discovery to get back. And they're going to get out of it. I don't think they're going to...
They're not going to leave without Burnham and Lorca, though.
No, but they're going to have... I think it's going to be resolved by the end of the episode, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think the twin Stamets will be the ones to figure out their way back.
That's very possible. Because, I think the fact that he was not a big part of this episode leads me to believe that he will be a huge part of next week's episode. There were just hints of his storyline in this one. And we don't have really any resolution or closure on Dr. Culber's death, which I think we're going to get in the next episode.
Yes.
They have very much hinted that he's not 100% dead.
No, she said that the spores, I forget the exact line she used, but they're the only, I don't know.
It was something about life and death.
Something about bridging life and death. Something about...
And that's actually probably the one thing we haven't talked about in this episode is, people have been over the moon about Cadet Tilly since she was introduced. And I was not quite 100% on board with that character, but I am as of this episode. Yeah. Because we saw her really sort of start to take charge. And not just as play acting her mirror counterpart, we
She knows
see
her
her.
stuff.
Yeah, we see a lot of confidence in her. This is like I always take her back to she's the Barclay of this show, and they always showed Barclay as being actually very good at what he does, despite his social issues, and this establishes that for her as well.
And she's just young, she's just starting out. She's only a cadet, and she says to Saru, "Are you impressed enough to recommend me for,
Admittedly, she said that right before her patient started to die.
Yeah. But, that's another thing. I thought that maybe they'd listen to her for a second. Like, don't tell them not to come in. Like, no, you're done. You had your shot at it. Because, it's only like a few seconds beyond when they're supposed to die that they come back. Always. Just do it a little bit longer. And it seems to work. Have an inner eyelid or something.
But clearly, Stamets needed to, air quotes, die
right.
in order to advance whatever is going on with him. So,
yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it certainly keeps your interest.
It really does.
You get tired of waiting that 7 days.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here talking on a Wednesday night, and so we got still quite a while till the next episode. Unfortunately, it definitely makes you excited for Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that is episode 11, The Wolf Inside. So thank you all for joining us, and until next time, enjoy the final frontier.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.